So I'm 42, probably makes me a bit older than a bunch of people in the audience. And I'm still alive, but barely. Actually, we're right at the end of my thing here. Hang on. I don't want to take the pleasure of the slides away, which is my mistake. See if we come back on. That's my Twitter handle. If you want to make fun of me, you're welcome. Being 42, you also stop caring at some point. So I'm still alive, but I barely know how. And I think I've come to realize that we live in an incredible world of chaos. And since actually yesterday was September 11, and as I was flying back from San Francisco, sort of thinking back to, we've lived with global terror for a while. We've seen the impact of global warming. We've seen financial crisis, which is very different from the previous one because it was a systemic crisis. It meant, we had a world that ran out of control, and we couldn't really blame the investment bankers. It was like the whole system went out of control. We borrowed too much, and the central banks didn't know what was happening. The whole thing was collapsing around us. And, it's like the whole system had moved into a state of uncertainty and chaos, and it was kind of scary for everybody. And then I'm thinking, well, and from a technology standpoint, this acceleration is so dramatic. I mean, the Google IPO was 2004. I think YouTube, which is probably the biggest media company in the world, was only created in 2005. And then came about the totemic company of the age. The overriding economic theory these days is from a guy called Schumpeter, and he says, it's all about disruptive innovation. The hero is the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur sees, technology innovation as a way to capture markets, to upend industries, to change the world, and for him to make economic gain in the process. And he goes and changes industries. So I posit that the totemic company is actually Amazon. Why? Because Amazon created not only the biggest e-commerce juggernaut, but also something called Amazon Cloud Services. And for me, this is really the thing that has pushed us into a world of speed. Two comments. So this is an Amazon warehouse. And if you notice, the packages, they're never the same size and the same shape. Well, that's because Amazon uses chaotic math as a way of optimizing the way its warehouses are built and how the robots do the pick and pack. But maybe more importantly, Amazon built cloud services. There is another economist called Ronald Coase who was thinking about the shape and size of firms. Back in Victorian times, you had 300,000 employees, and you had HR departments and 5-year planning, and the world was fairly stable. If you work at Nestle today, you're in the food business, it probably looks like that. But for everybody else, the logical boundaries of these firms shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. And really, the only reason why you have firms at all today probably because you want employees and you don't want them to leave every morning or to have to renegotiate their salary every day. But the boundaries of these firms have shrunk, and they've shrunk thanks to things like Amazon Cloud Services. So now you built on the back of Stripe, you host at Amazon, and within days you've got an e-commerce website that's up and running. So that has created this incredible acceleration in the speed at which we can build and scale companies, and means that we have entire industries that get upended in months or years. In my world, in the world of venture capital, the most striking example is without a doubt AngelList. So AngelList a few years ago did not exist. Today you can go get financing in a space of hours if you want to, with the contracts being automated, with the regulatory aspects being taken care of, and you can do things like this. Tim Ferriss's investment page. Tim Ferriss, slightly annoying author, amazing blogger, general powerhouse. Well, look what he's done. He's gone on AngelList, and because he has a pretty good portfolio that seems to include Facebook and Twitter, not bad, he has attracted 349 followers, which means every time he makes an investment decision, he pulls in $1.6 million with him. So if he now partners up with Kevin Rose, who's at the top, well, these two guys can write the same check as an investment firm like mine. That's pretty awesome, right? We have two people who can move $4 million into your startup at the click of a button, and you can choose to go and put $20,000 behind them by clicking back. Now that's disruption. And that's disruption at a speed and a level that we didn't see before. And I think the concept here is that we're basically not in linear environments anymore. You can throw away your 2-year planning, it doesn't matter. We are in hyperspeed. We are in modes of growth that do not follow any form of linear thinking, except we as human beings, we like correlation, we like straight lines. This is why, some people can't get their head around the fact that WhatsApp went from being worth 1 billion to 3 to 10, and they're like, what the fuck is wrong with the venture market? How do these people think that you could create value that fast? Well, it's sort of missing the point. These companies don't grow linearly. They grow more like this. This is a fractal. I use fractals on my blog. And the reason why I use fractals on my blog is a sort of delicate dig against VCs. Venture capitalists think pattern recognition exists. So we pride ourselves on we've seen this movie before and we know what's going to work and not work. I think the reality is we have to posit our own ignorance, because the speed of change and the characteristics that make companies successful are so hard to define that we're really living in something that looks like a fractal. So fractals also are good. I love that as an image, and this is back to design here for a second. Somebody before was talking about, the intercom guy was talking about the Uberification of interactions, single button action. Well, a fractal, when you look at it from far away, it looks very complex, and as you come in, you actually find out that they're minute repetitions of the same pattern. Well, that's the same as pressing yes on your Uber button. That's the same as a WhatsApp application. It's incredibly simple, and it creates outcomes that look nonlinear. So as a sort of design analog to understanding why these companies grow so fast, I sort of like it. The problem, though, is that we were only a few tens of thousands of years old as a species evolved to the state that we are today. And we were not designed to deal with fractal situations like that where change was around us all the time. We were designed to deal with fight or flight, generate cortisol and adrenaline when you're being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger so you can live, and then spend most of your days sitting on your back, eating berries, and occasionally going hunting. So the net result of the world we live in today is that we are exposed to cortisol and adrenaline all the time. We live in an elevated state of tension, and we're effectively killing ourselves over time. Most people die from some form of what's called allostatic load, which is effectively the fact that your body accumulates stressors and starts to develop things like infection or general degradation of your body over time. And so on the one hand, we love living in chaos and we love living in this hyper-accelerated world because it's exciting and it offers possibilities, and change is a part of human nature too. On the other hand, it is effectively killing all of us. And so the question I always ask myself is, how do I define system in which I can be happy and perform and sort of accept chaos and let it wash over me and still be a high-performing individual? Now, when you're faced with chaos, most people think that they should rely on luck, right? They say, oh, this entrepreneur got lucky, this entrepreneur got lucky. So the first step in understanding how you can embrace chaos is maybe to think about chance and luck. This guy, Mr. Wiseman, did some of my favorite studies on that topic. So he does these little tests where he will get people into his lab and he'll say, here's a newspaper. Please count how many images are in the paper. And the people who consider themselves lucky will complete the exercise in a few seconds. And the people who consider themselves unlucky will take 3 to 4 minutes. You may ask why. Well, the lucky people turn to page 2 and realize that there is an insert that says there are 47 pictures in this paper. Whereas the people who consider themselves unlucky never see that. Now on page 9, it says, stop reading, it's big, stop reading, there are 42 pictures in this paper, and you can get a $250 coupon on Amazon. And the people who consider themselves unlucky still don't see that second one and go and count to the end. And so he's done a bunch of studies like that, and his findings are actually the people who consider themselves lucky are just open to what may come. The people who are unlucky are stuck in routines and worried about outcomes. And so one of the defining factors that will screw up your life is fear. When you're in chaos, you can't predict outcomes. When you can't predict outcomes, you tend to be fearful. When you tend to be fearful, you're not available to what's coming to you, and you're never around to seize luck when it comes, because everybody will cross path with a lucky moment sometime in their lives, and the lucky ones are the ones who recognize it and go with it. So the first thing about managing chaos is sort of allowing yourself to see what lies before you and waiting for that lucky moment to come in, and not being stuck in ways of thinking, but being able to grasp it when it arrives. One of my favorite researchers, and you will all be asked to spell his name at the end, is Csikszentmihalyi. And he was interested in understanding how athletes perform, and also how people like soldiers perform in situations of stress. Again, with fear being a factor in some of these cases. And he's the guy who developed the theory of flow, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. And the theory of flow was like, understand how people get in the zone, how people understand how they achieve hyper-focus. And when they do, they tend to be relaxed, and they tend to be perfectly on top of their craft, and they tend to sort of outperform without any tension. This is the concert pianist who's mastered his craft, etc. And it applies very directly to all of us when we work with startups and we work with small consultancies, and we're constantly sort of trying to fight all these external stimuli and achieve this moment either individually or as a team when we're in flow. And he found some conditions as to how you make that work. And these are clear and attainable goals, personal control around the outcome, immediate feedback loops are very important. Feel like you try, you get back. This is why, I think lean startups are also something that we humanly can all attach ourselves to, because you have these direct and immediate feedback loops, an inherently rewarding nature to the activity. And then you achieve this sort of state of your loss of consciousness, and you're in the zone and you're performing. And I think that to the extent we could create conditions of flow, and when you're designing organizations or you're thinking about what makes your employees or team members successful, that's an important part of it. To go one step beyond, you can look at people like Dan Pink. My slide moves. So Dan Pink, he's not a researcher himself, he's more of an author. But he looked at a bunch of things like, does it actually work to incentivize people with money and to get them to work better? And unless you're doing repetitive mechanical tasks, the answer is it doesn't. In fact, there is negative correlation between linking performance and higher pay in most cognitive tasks, which is very contrarian, and most people still to this day don't believe it. But the old Victorian models of linking performance in terms of pay to effort and outputs actually don't work, and even work in reverse. So what he found was you have to pay people enough that you can take earnings and money off the table. But you have very, very clear declining effects and negative effects when you start to link their performance to pay too much, a bit like they do in the banking world. What people really care about is autonomy. So again, the ability to own the outcomes. Mastery, which is the notion that you can master a craft, and purpose. So if you want examples of that, Atlassian, when they did their 24-hour challenges, they'd go to everybody and they'd say, for 24 hours, you can hack whatever you want, in whatever way you want, but we want something that's usable at the end of it. And when they were doing these autonomous hackathons, is how they came up, I believe, with Jara, or some of their product iterations anyway, came out of these exercises. And that was autonomy at work. Mastery, people learn music even though they will never perform in the front of others, and they'll do it for hours and hours because they love to do it. Is rarely applied at work. But if you love what you do and you can develop mastery at work, that's an enormous motivator. And finally, purpose. So just counterintuitive, but ways to rethink about things that may make you nervous, right? So money makes people unhappy. Why? Because they compare. And you're always comparing how much fucking money the guy next to you makes, and he's an asshole and he's political. And in reality, it's absolutely not the problem you're faced with. It does not matter. In fact, money, if you talk to people who are rich, and in my line of business, there's a bunch of guys who are rich, I will tell you what their life looks like. They have 4 properties, and it's a fucking headache because it's leaking in Portugal and somebody stole their car in Holland. They have limited relationship with their family members because everything's being taken care of by third parties and they basically see each other for the holidays. And they actually are not particularly happy. So get money out of your mind. It's a trap, right? You need to make enough money that you don't have to worry. I mean, living in London and having to count the pence is not a fun thing. But once you're above that, it's a non-issue. What you should care about is whether you have purpose, whether you have mastery, and whether you actually can get shit done, whether you own the outcomes. Moving on from that, I think there's a framework that was developed by Maslow, which again a lot of people will know, but it's worth touching on, which is the so-called hierarchy of needs. Now, Maslow is a bit simplistic because his view is if you don't have your deficiency needs met, this is safety, food, love, belonging, you can't really get to the higher parts of the pyramid. But what he's basically saying is, there are basic needs you need to have met. Once you have that, you will escalate, you will move to a next level of maturity, which is, am I recognized? Am I esteemed? Am I important within my industry? Can I get on stage wearing a leather jacket and kind of pontificate? And will that make me feel better about myself? And ultimately what he's saying is, when you get to the next level and you're able to abstract yourself from what others think, what your perceived importance is in the world, etc., when you get to this higher level of understanding who you are, and you stop caring so much about doing things for others or for recognition, etc., then you achieve a different level of consciousness and happiness that sort of takes you up the pyramid towards something that's close to maybe not happiness, but an ability to be content in a world that you don't control. When people talk about this, they usually say self-actualization. Please slap them for me, because if you want to, I just hate that term. I think it's all about finding out who you are and then stopping to live for others or within systems you did not design. Nobody said you had to have a career. Nobody said anything about how you should lead your life. And when we live in environments of chaos and constant evolution, etc., write your own fucking rules about what happiness looks like. Please don't live by anybody else's system. Please don't dress the way other people expect you to. Please don't think you need to raise your kids in a particular way. Write your own story. This is what the top of this pyramid is about. The thing ultimately that helps you transcend everything is purpose. This is an image from Terrence Malick, Tree of Life. I love Terrence Malick. The Thin Red Line is one of the best movies ever. Purpose will transcend everything because it will allow you to go through the hardship of life knowing where you're going. The founder of Indiegogo says it beautifully. She took 3 years to raise the first money. She almost died in the process. She had such a hard time. But she had a sense of purpose because she found something that was her passion, and it didn't matter, and she kept going with it, and that purpose brought her through hard times and kind of helped her build Indiegogo, when any normal human being would have given up. When I talk to people about venture, venture capitalists have a terrible reputation because they usually sit in boardrooms and they tell entrepreneurs what to do. They say, well, you should scale your sales team this way, and you're spending too much money, etc. And they're very normative. In reality, I consider venture, I love doing venture with an absolute passion. I've never thought about work ever since I started doing this. Why? Because I have a sense of purpose around helping people build companies. And so I'm not ashamed to be a finance guy, and I'm not ashamed that I need to produce returns and that ultimately I'm in a financial role. Why? Because I have a real sense of passion around helping entrepreneurs build companies. And it transcends all the things that I don't like about my job because for me that's my life, and I will die in the saddle doing it unless I become completely irrelevant, and hopefully will recognize it in time so I can sunset myself and go do something else. So if I can sort of try and bring that all back together, we live in environments where everything is designed to kill us, right? It's too much information, it's too much change, it's just, as human beings, we were never engineered to deal with that level of continuous engagement. Your brain explodes, you're supposed to multitask and all that stuff. But at the same time, it's the beauty of the world we live in, right? It's software is eating the world, it's these new companies that emerge and that get built. It's the ability to create things at the speed of light. And so I love that world. I love living in it. I think what you have to learn is to sort of embrace chaos, let it wash over you, and almost like, you're standing in a stream and you feel this sea of change is constantly coming at you, and get excited about the things you can control. Don't get excited about the things you cannot control. Don't get upset about things like money. They don't matter. Just look at everything around purpose, achievement, autonomy, and embrace chaos and luck and serendipity and the improbable, and let that be a strength, and don't try and control your environment too much. If you have children, it's even more important, because we inherited a Victorian system of school that is designed to format little individuals that can be productive and turning the crank in some kind of economic machine. And that is a world that clearly does not exist, yet we still have school systems that are sort of designed to get little individuals that can crank the machine. So for children, and you see the speed at which they're exposed to technology, and I'm a father of 3, even more important that you help them understand the skills they're going to need to live in chaos. Large corporations do not survive. They get killed very quickly. There is no such thing as job security. There is no such thing as skills that will carry you through your entire life. So you have to let go of fear. You have to embrace chaos. And that's the key, in my mind, to being happy in the world we live in. Thank you very much.